This week has been a difficult week for our city, for our community, for our church. We woke up on Memorial Day still grappling with the toll COVID-19 has wreaked on the world, only to find ourselves thrown into another crisis when we woke up the following day to video clips showing a police officer, one sworn to serve and protect, with his knee firmly and unmovably planted on George Floyd's neck, which eventually and inevitably killed him. We saw other officers around who did not help someone who was visibly suffering on the pavement. And then later that night, we got the first images of the escalation of protests into an uprising of rage, despair, and hopelessness. And in some other corners, we saw deliberate efforts to sow discord and destruction. And since then, our whole community, and now the whole country, is embroiled in another crisis in the middle of an ongoing crisis. And in the midst of all this, while we are wrestling with what is going on, while we are talking and meeting and analyzing and presiding, when we are marching and protesting, when we are asking people to hear, we're asking people to listen, I was trying to think about Pentecost all week, trying to find just the right things to say about Pentecost and what is the word for us in the middle of chaos and crisis. And I almost missed it. I almost missed what it should have been obvious right away. That this is exactly the time when Pentecost is most relevant for what we are experiencing. Let me put it this way. We need Pentecost. We need a rush of wind to fill this city, to fill the nation. We need tongues of fire ready to speak truth and wisdom in a language for those who haven't been listening can actually hear what's being said. We need Pentecost. And it occurred to me that perhaps we've gotten too satisfied with the image of the Holy Spirit as comforter. She is that. She is a comforter. But sometimes comfort becomes equated with blankets. And that means we want to settle in and cover up just our own bodies. But no, that's the individual use of the Holy Spirit. If we individualize her too much, if we spiritualize Holy Spirit too much, we're going to have trouble imagining how her arrival on that Pentecost day presupposed that good people, out of fear, out of comfort, out of indifference, may need a jolt of something, may need a fiery rush to get them to get up and get out and start doing something. We have trouble seeing how the Holy Spirit, on that first Pentecost day, how the Holy Spirit orchestrated and precipitated through God's people a living embodiment of God's alternative ordering of the world. Yes, the Holy Spirit is a truth teller and a door opener. And when truth is told and doors are open, somebody is going to resist it, and violently. The Holy Spirit is a truth teller and a door opener. And when she tells the truth and when she opens the door, I'm sorry, there's going to be some fire. There's going to be some fire. Oh, you said, Pastor, can that be true? I've read the story. Well, let me read it again for you. You see, between Jesus' resurrection and ascension and then the arrival of the Holy Spirit, the people of God were left to continue the journey without him. They didn't have a plan. They didn't have an organization. It wasn't First Jerusalem Church of God in Christ. No. They weren't organized. 11 of the original 12 disciples Jesus chose specifically for this journey was left to hold it all together with whatever was left. They had no idea what to do. All they know to do is to pray and watch and to serve. And so they're praying, they're waiting for something to happen. No, there was no organizational chart. There was no strategic plan. There was no building which all Jesus' followers could get to for safety and for community. They were in crisis. Jerusalem was in crisis. Rome was in crisis. Imperial oppression, state-sanctioned violence, economic injustice. Am I talking about Jerusalem in the first century? Am I talking about Minneapolis? Somebody's going to get me in trouble. Imperial oppression, state-sanctioned violence, economic injustice. Something needed to be done. Change needed to happen. And it looks like Jesus was leaving it up to them to do it. Oh, and that's when the Holy Spirit comes walking in. They were going to need power to do something about what was going on. And notice something. Here's again. I know the Holy Spirit is comfort. We love to call on her. We call on her too quickly. But I want you to notice something about the movement of the Holy Spirit. She does not arrive when things are certain and settled. When she arrives, she does not come quietly and peacefully. We've been hearing that word, peace. Peace. We're too quick to shout peace and peace when there is no peace. But she doesn't come quietly and peacefully. The Holy Spirit does not arrive to reinforce the status quo or to help the disciples just to cope or to just get along. No. She comes into the chaos and confusion, and she complicates the situation further, both for the weak and the powerful. Oh, see, nobody goes unscathed when she arrives. Because when she arrives, those who were thought to be weak come out of hiding. Those who were discounted find their voices. The weak start dreaming and visioning, and they start prophesying. Boy, you don't want weak folk to start prophesying, because somebody gonna get upset. But that's what she does. She get these weak people out of that room, and they run out and they start prophesying and dreaming and visioning, start talking about how there's supposed to be justice and righteousness. They start telling you that this ain't right and we need to make change. That's how the Holy Spirit arrived. And those who thought themselves powerful had to contend with the agitation of people they thought they had already been able to control. The powerful had to start listening to people they didn't have to listen to before. Those with all the power and all the money had to stand like, who are these people? We thought we had it together. Oh, I'm talking about Pentecost now, y'all. I'm talking about Pentecost. I'm talking about uncertainty, chaos, and noise. I'm talking about the Holy Spirit doesn't actually stabilize or bring order to anything. She brings justice, and she doesn't care how she gets it. The Holy Spirit brings fire and ecstasy and proclaiming and prophesying. This is stuff you can't control. Oh, when she says, I'm going to empower you, you've got to watch out. Oh, you say, how do you know? How do you know? Here's how I know. I'm talking about it was such a force. It was such a force that came through that room and got those people out of that room that the bystanders begin to wonder, are these people drunk? They don't normally act like this. Oh, how do I know? Because Peter, the one who couldn't find his voice, the one who was so afraid to even stand up for Jesus, not even knew Jesus, now runs out of the room and start preaching, start pointing fingers and say, you got to make some changes up in here. That's how powerful the Holy Spirit is. Finds his voice to speak loudly and boldly. This is what happens when the Holy Spirit comes to town. This is what happens when the Holy Spirit falls and rains down on bodies. This is what happens when the Holy Spirit makes people she empowers. And then someone, even in the text, they said, what does this mean? What does this mean? It means that when those who are weak find that power, When the Holy Spirit falls on weak flesh, they're no longer nameless. They're no longer powerless. They're no longer voiceless. Oh, we know, because before this, we didn't know who George Floyd was. We didn't know a bunch of names, but when the Holy Spirit comes, names get shouted. People who were nameless became known. What does this mean? It means that all flesh has been endowed with the power to dream, heal, pray, serve, prophesy, bear witness to the gospel of love and liberation. What does this mean? It means that the Holy Spirit can't be hijacked by politics, economics, COVID-19, police brutality, or anything else that oppresses and diminishes and dominates and persecutes. What does it mean? It means that the narrative of who gets to speak and who matters and who dreams will be realized, and whose prophecy should get listened to will get rewritten. That's what it means. Oh, what does this mean? It means that you can't fool the Holy Spirit with Minnesota nice. You can't fool her. And so perhaps this is just the right moment. Just the right moment to expect the movement of the Holy Spirit. Maybe right now is just the opportune moment to pray for that wind to come rushing through. This is just the right moment to pray for that fire that'll loose your tongue so you can tell the truth. If we are those who are having trouble figuring out what in our mind we say, well, what do they want? Or why is this? If that's your question, then perhaps it's time to pray for ears to hear in our own language what the prophets are trying to tell us. If our voices are wavering and our resolve is weakening in the face of injustice, perhaps it's time to pray for a Holy Spirit that would empower us to speak up for what is right. Perhaps that's the prayer. That the Holy Spirit would empower us to prophesy the justice of God's reign in a world that is bent on killing black and brown bodies. Perhaps this is the time to ask the Holy Spirit to empower us to share in God's dream of shalom for everybody, no matter who they are. Perhaps this is the time to pray for a Holy Spirit that would empower us to let go some of our own status and privilege so that we can truly have an equal and equitable society. Oh, I know it's hard to hear, but the Holy Spirit can do it. She can do it. Oh, I grew up in the church where they said, let the Spirit have her way. Let her have her way. Don't resist. Let her take control and have her way. Let her take control and have her way so that we can speak boldly and prophetically about the needs of the most vulnerable around us. Let the Spirit have her way so that in the midst of a joyless and divisive faith that props up our unjust political and economic status quo, let the Holy Spirit have her way with us so that we can prophesy life, we can prophesy liberation, we can prophesy abundance, we can prophesy justice for all God's children. Let the Spirit have her way so that in the face of extrajudicial killings of unarmed black people, we'll know what to do to work for justice so that justice will roll down like water and righteousness as a mighty stream. In the face of white supremacy, let the Holy Spirit have her way so that black lives will truly matter. And that we would have to change the lyrics of the song from "we shall overcome" to say "we overcame" by the power of the Holy Spirit. Oh, we need that Pentecost. We need that rush of wind. We need it. Let it come through. Let it blow away some of these old thinking. Let it blow away these old systems. Let it bring up something new. Let that wind rush through. Let her have her way. Oh, but I've seen it. I've seen her working. I've seen her. I've seen the Holy Spirit move people and communities to do justice when it would have been easier not to. Oh, I've seen the Holy Spirit. I've seen it. I've seen it in all of the white allies who come forth and say, I'm going to shout Black Lives Matter when people were demanding that they shout all lives matter. I've seen the Holy Spirit. I've seen the Holy Spirit working in people who put their lives and livelihood on the line to demonstrate true solidarity with black and brown people. I've seen the Holy Spirit working in the aftermath of George Floyd's death, empowering people to see how injustice persisted. And I've seen them on the streets, around the memorial, walking in the streets. I've seen them yelling it out. I've seen them challenging friends on social media, friends and family. I've seen them shouting it loudly. That's the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit makes people tell the truth without worrying about the consequences. I've seen the Holy Spirit working in the midst of even the burning and looting, empowering people to question and challenge the easy and the incorrect narrative that pain and suffering of the voiceless is simply criminality and law breaking in disguise. No, they know the truth. Pain and suffering is real, and we got to do something about it. And some of our faith talk has been too easy. It's been too easy. I myself, I've been too far. I've gone too far just simply invoking the Holy Spirit as an all-purpose justification or explanation for things that I find good. Oh, but that's not how she arrives all the time, Pastor DeWayne. That's not how she arrives. And so I want us to get back in touch with Pentecost. I want us to remember the Holy Spirit's arrival on the day of Pentecost. When it seems like we're getting too comfortable, I want us to go back to that text and remember the rush of wind and the fiery tongue. I want us to remember that the Holy Spirit is a truth teller and a door opener. I want us to remember that she comes in the middle of chaos, and I want you to remember that she pushes people outdoors. Every time we get comfortable, remember that Comforter also pushes you out the door. I want us to remember that noisy, empowering, audacious rush of wind, forcing people out of hiding to go out and start prophesying. That's the Pentecost we need. And more than that, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Jamar Clark, Philando Castilla, all of them, all of the names, the ones we know, the ones we don't know, they need us to invite the wind. They need us to come in and run out of these doors and start speaking and prophesying like the Holy Spirit pushes us to. They need us to walk out of these rooms, out of our comforts, and say the truth. That Holy Spirit, ask for the wind, ask for the fire, ask for a loosening of the tongue so we can speak. Ask for prophecy, ask for vision, ask for dream, because that's what the Holy Spirit wants to give us. And she will do so. Holy Spirit, have your way. Amen.